We were playing outside and this little girl arrived, and of course as children you usually say, "Who are you?" or "What's your name?" or something. And I remember her saying, "Billie on a Whitelaw." And me in my ignorance thought like Billie on a bicycle. And she was quite indignant and said, "Honour," emphasising the H, "honour." So to get my own back, I said, "But Billie's a boy's name anyway." There was a boy in the corner called Billy Meredith, and she said, "Yes, my dad wanted a boy, but I was a girl, but he gave me a boy's name." And that was our really first encounter. Well, you liked her from the word go because she was lively. She was lovely, energetic girl, and always imaginative. We'll do this, we'll do that. She was often the initiator of things that we would do. Yes, she was a lovely girl. Her parents lived on the GEC estate. Her father worked for the GEC, which is a factory which is no longer there now, but not far away from here. And she was born in I think it was Second Avenue, uh, which were houses for the workers. And again, they had an uncle or somebody come to live with them, and it wasn't big enough. And that's how they came to move to Sidley Avenue. She was a brilliant skipper. We were all envious of she could crisscross and do all sorts of things skipping. She was a natural athlete, I think. And I'm sure as a gymnast, she'd have done very well because she could do handstands, the crab, and all sorts of athletic things like that. But she would be often say, "Shall we do this?" she'd often say. And of course, we were lucky. Behind these houses, there are allotments. And so it was quite a nice play area out at the back of the houses. I'm not quite sure, it must have been about 37, 38. They were showing the film 60 Glorious Years with Anna Eagle and Anton Walbrook. And I think my mother probably thought it would be educational, but she took Billie, another girl, Bernice, and I to see it. And of course, we must have been very impressed with the death scene of Albert, because in Bernice's back garden, we enacted this death scene, and Billie insisted we all played the different roles. So I had to play Victoria as well as Albert and the doctor. And if either of Bernice or I said something, she would correct us. I think she must have memorised the dialogue word for word. "No, he didn't say that," or "She didn't say that." And that to say she'd only been about 8 at the time. Because we'd seen this, I think as children you become a bit fascinated by death. You're not quite sure how to handle it. But I know Billie and I went on the bus from here up to London Road, where the London Road Cemetery is. And we spent an afternoon looking at gravestones, calling to one another if we found somebody particularly old or particularly young, or the name was unusual, often, biblical names, carvings, little statuettes. We had a lovely afternoon up there looking at all these things. My dad, because he'd been in the First World War, when war was declared, quickly dug a trench shelter in the back garden, which became a perfect place for Billie and I and others to play different things. And one Saturday afternoon, I think we were playing shops, and we happened to be out in the garden, and this plane flew 30 foot over the roof with a black cross on the side. You could even see the pilot. It was a Dornier. We knew that because they called it the Flying Pencil. Obviously, later I realised it was photographing the factories. We ran into the house to tell my mother, because she'd heard it, but it had gone by the time she got out. I'm not sure she totally believed us when we said it was German. But later that day, we heard that workers leaving the Canley factory, Triumph I think it probably was, or Standard Triumph, had been machine gunned, the day shift going off at 5 o'clock. Billy's mum and dad, the war was a nuisance to them. They were social creatures, and just on the corner of the road, it's gone now, was the Aldermore Hotel, and they used to like to go for a drink there. And they would drop Billy in here, and she would come in by this time we'd got an Anderson shelter, and she would come in the Anderson shelter with us. And then when the sirens went, usually about 7:30, Mr. and Mrs. Whitelaw would come round the back entry and pick her up and take her home. The war years certainly intruded, and then Mr. and Mrs. Whitelaw sent Billy up to Liverpool to relations when we started having the raids here. Of course, that was a bit out of the frying pan into the fire, because not long after the Coventry Blitz, I think the Liverpool Blitz took place. So Billy was away for a while. The mother said to me one day, "Would you like to come with me one Sunday to see her?" I said, "Yeah, that'd be lovely," and we went together. So we went to see Billy. She wasn't very happy, I don't think, with her evacuation. And not long after that, she came back. People were obviously getting killed, and the mayor at the time set up a air raid victims distress fund. And Billy and I and another boy called David decided we'd like to do something about it. So we made up, in my back garden, there were lots of marigolds. We made up little bunches of marigolds. We went house to house and asked people if they got any magazines, Picture Post, Illustrated, things like that, and one or two ladies' magazines. We set up shop on the jug and bottle step of the local pub, and as men came out, they very kindly bought magazines and various things. What we'd got left, we went door to door down the road. And eventually we raised the grand sum of £1, 1 shilling and 7pence, which when I looked up, that was 1941, I looked up what would that be in present day terms, and it's just about £50. So it was reasonably, it was quite a decent amount of money. And they very kindly invited us, along with other people who had raised money, to the council house. And we were given orange squash and biscuits. I think the older people had cups of tea. And then the mayor wrote a nice letter to us saying thank you for what you've done for your worthy citizens for doing this, yes. We had a great time doing that, though. Billy then, came, I remember always when she came, she says, we're going to Bradford. I said, "Why are you going to Bradford?" She said, "My dad's got to go." And I was really sad when she told me that. But we kept in touch. She wrote to me, and of course, with no phones or anything in those days, and we kept in touch. And then this exciting letter telling me to listen to a programme she was going to be on the radio playing in a play called Buncle. She took the title role of Buncle, which was a boy's part. But you wouldn't have known if you didn't know that it wasn't a boy playing the part. And another thing struck me, as when she used to be here, if she got excited, she got quite a pronounced stutter and stammer. And she must have overcome that, obviously, for her career, because, I never heard ever in anything I saw slight idea of stammering or stuttering. But as a child, she had quite a pronounced, if she got excited, yeah. I went to see her debut in London, her West End debut, when she was in Hotel Paradiso, and the lead part was Alec Guinness. This would be 1956, I think. And I went stage door, met up with her. Neither of us had got much money, but she said, "I know a little place round the back in a back street, an Italian," and we had a really nice meal for very little money. We kept in touch at Christmas time. Billy said, "I don't send cards," but she used to speak to me on the phone. And it was rather nice, because I do my own Christmas cards, and I sent one to her, and she gave me a mention of that I made my cards and she still had them. But the last time I saw her, I happened to be over in Cambridge, and she told me of this secret cottage that she'd got just on the borders of Suffolk and Norfolk. And I called in on spec. I knew she was there, and I called in. And unfortunately, she was going to have to take her husband to Bury St Edmunds Hospital for an appointment. So we only had about half an hour, 3/4 of an hour. And that was the last I saw of her. And then I didn't hear from her for 2 Christmases. And I hadn't read it that anything had happened. And it was only later I realised that she got a degree of dementia, and she had been in a home for actors and actresses for the last few years of her life. Yes. Yes, I have discovered, I hadn't realised this, but somewhere in town, a bit like the thing in Hollywood, they've got stars, and she is one of the stars. I think, again, it's up to the people that live in the house, but a blue plaque might have been quite nice, saying this was where Billie Whitelaw lived from 1937 to 41, or 36 or 37 to 41, yeah.